Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 of section 3.1, and this part is going to be on a couple of different variations of the mean. So, for instance, we could calculate a mean from a frequency distribution. So if we're given a table where we have say some scores. This is the same frequency distribution that we saw in earlier videos, where we have some scores from exams and the frequency for each range in here. If we were not given the individual scores, each individual test's score from the exam, it will be hard to calculate the exact mean. But what we can do is we can approximate this from the frequency distribution. So we know that we have two tests between 50 and 59. We know we have two tests between 60 and 69, and so on and so forth. So what we'll do is we will approximate each test with the midpoint of each class here. So we'll have the class midpoint. And this isn't going to be perfect. This is just an estimate. But if we know that we have two tests between 50 and 59, those two tests could be on either side of 54.5, which is exactly halfway between 50 and 59. So we'll just record these really quick. And this is how we will approximate the exams from inside of each one of these classes. Now, even though we're going to approximate each one of these tests using this, the old formula for calculating a mean will be to add up every single test score and then divide by the total number of tests. So here, since there are two tests that are 54, I would take 54.5 plus 54.5 plus 64.5 plus 64.5 plus, and then we'll have 5 of the 74s, we'll have 8 of the 84s, and 7 of the 94s. That's a lot of numbers to add. And it turns out there is an easier way. So what I'll do is I'll focus on this first line here. Instead of adding 54.5 twice, I will simplify this and simply write this down. 54.5 twice is the same thing as 2 times 54.5, which is 109. So again, where am I getting this from? This is F times the class midpoint. So I would normally add 54.5 twice in my calculation because there are 2 of them when we're calculating the mean. Instead, I will just multiply by 2. So again, instead of adding 64.5 twice, I will multiply 64.5 by 2, which will be 129. Instead of adding this 5 times, I will simply multiply it by 5. And I have these numbers written down. 372.5. Instead of adding 84.5 8 times, I will simply multiply this by 8 and get the same number, 676. And 94.5, if we multiply that by 7, we will get 661.5. And again, the goal was to add up each of these numbers this many times. So what I want to do is I want to find the sum here. So the sum of all of the frequencies times their class midpoint is going to be 1,947.5. And then I need to divide by the number of numbers. And how many tests were there? Well, that's just the sum of all the frequencies. So there were 24 tests altogether. So the final result, the average here, is going to be 1,947.5. So the sum of all the test scores divided by 24, which is 81.15. Note that I round to one more digit than is here. So this number had, so all of my, sorry, yeah, I should be a bit more specific. All of these numbers went to the 1 past the decimal place, so my final average will go 2 past the decimal place. So let me summarize what I have done. I have approximated my average using my class midpoints instead of the actual scores, because the actual scores aren't listed here. And each class midpoint will occur exactly f times, where f is the frequency of that class. So I'm just taking the frequency times the class midpoints, and I'm dividing by the total number of test scores, which in this case, I can just add up all the frequencies to find the total number. So this is the formula for the average, sorry, for the mean. I shouldn't use average. This is the formula for the mean when given a frequency table and not the individual scores. The last way that we'll modify the mean is by having a weighted mean. And quite often, for instance in this class, I have given scores on different sections of the class different weights. So the homework is weighted 50%, each test is weighted 10%, and the final exam is weighted 20% of the final grade. This is the formula for a weighted average. So again, instead of just adding up all of the individual scores and dividing by how many scores there are, we will weight the different scores. So for instance, whatever the final homework score, whatever your final homework score is, we will multiply by the weight, which happens to be 50%. And then each test I have weighted at 10%, so we'll multiply each one of those tests at 10%, multiply the final one at 20%, and we'll add all that up. And here, instead of dividing by the number of individual scores you have, we're going to divide by the sum of the weight. And there's a reason why I chose 50, 10, 10, 10, 10 for the 3 tests, and 20 is because this should add up to 100%. If it didn't, we could still find the weighted average though. So let's run through this calculation. The average, let's say at the end of the semester, we come up with these scores. So we have a 92 score of 92 on the homework, and this will be weighted by 50%. So I'm going to turn 50% into a decimal. So this is 0.5 times 92 plus the first test is weighted at 10%. So this is 0.1 times 76 plus if we do really well on the second test, this is again 0.1 times 100. We'll have 0.1 times the third test and 0.2 times the last one. And if I have added everything up right, the sum of the weights, so this will be 0.5 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.2. Again, 0.5 plus the 3.1s and the 0.2 should add up to 1. So the final score, if I have done everything correct, will be 89.1. Again, we're just weighting each individual score with the weight that it shows here, and we'll sum the weight. These were cleverly chosen so that the sum of the weight will add up to 1. This can also be used to calculate GPA, for instance, where the weight that you assign to each letter grade is going to be the number of credits that the class is worth. So there, for instance, W will be the number of credits for the class, and X will be the GPA score, say 4 for an A, or 3 for a B, 2 for a C, and so on. And there will be a couple of questions in the homework that will deal with weighted means.